Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he barely noticed. The exploration mission had been quiet for weeks, and Jake was starting to think they might actually complete this survey without any major incidents. "Captain, we're picking up a distress signal," announced Lieutenant Rachel Green from the communications station. Her voice carried an edge of concern that made Jake set down his cup and walk over to her console. "What kind of signal?" Jake asked, studying the readings over her shoulder. "It's coming from the Zalarian Empire, sir. The transmission is weak, but it looks like a Priority 1 distress call." Jake frowned. The Zalarians were known throughout this sector as a proud warrior race. They rarely asked for help from anyone, especially not from humans. The two species had only made contact 3 years ago, and relations had been polite but distant. "Put it through," Jake ordered. The main screen flickered and displayed the image of a green-skinned woman with intricate tattoos covering her arms and face. Her eyes were a deep amber color, and her expression was serious. She wore what appeared to be military dress uniform with numerous medals and ribbons. "This is Commander Vexara Thorn of the Zalarian High Command," the woman said in accented but clear English. "We require immediate assistance. Our empire is facing extinction, and we have heard that humans may possess the knowledge to save us." Jake felt his crew stirring behind him. Dr. Kevin Stone, the ship's medical officer, stepped forward with interest. "Extinction?" Jake asked. "What kind of threat are you facing?" "Not a threat, Captain Morrison. A plague, a genetic disease that has been killing our people for generations. Our population has dropped to critical levels. We have perhaps 5 years before our entire species disappears forever." The bridge fell silent. Jake could hear the quiet hum of the ship's engines and the soft beeping of various instruments. He had expected many things when they entered Zalarian space, but this was not one of them. "I'm sorry to hear about your situation," Jake said carefully, "but I'm not sure how we can help. We're an exploration vessel, not a medical research ship." Vexara's expression hardened. "Our scientists have studied your species extensively since first contact. Human genetic material shows unique adaptability. We believe that breeding between our species might produce offspring immune to the plague." Jake felt his stomach drop. He glanced back at his crew and saw the same shocked expressions on their faces. "Commander, I think there might be some misunderstanding here." "There is no misunderstanding, Captain Morrison. According to our ancient laws, when our species faces extinction, the High Chancellor may claim a mate from any available source to ensure survival. I am claiming you." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Jake opened his mouth to respond, but Vexara continued speaking. "You have been selected not just for your genetic compatibility, but for your demonstrated leadership abilities. Our observers have been monitoring your vessel for several weeks. Your tactical decisions during the asteroid field navigation and your crew's loyalty to you have impressed our council." "Commander Thorn," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady, "I'm honored by your confidence, but I can't simply abandon my duties to Starfleet. There are protocols, procedures." "Your protocols are irrelevant," Vexara replied. Her voice carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "Our ships have already surrounded your vessel and disabled your engines. You have 7 solar cycles to complete the bonding ritual with me, or both you and your crew will be executed according to our sacred honor code." The bridge erupted in quiet activity as his officers began checking their stations. "Chief Engineer." Maria Santos looked up from her console with grim confirmation. "She's right, Captain. Our engines are offline, and sensors show 12 Zalarian warships in formation around us." Jake felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. 43 crew members were depending on him to find a way out of this situation. He looked back at the screen where Vexara waited patiently for his response. "You're asking me to marry you to save your species," Jake said slowly. "What exactly does this bonding ritual involve?" "The ceremony itself is complex, but the basic requirement is that we must produce offspring within 1 year of the bonding. The child will carry genetic material from both our species and our scientists believe this hybrid vigor will overcome the plague. Dr. Stone stepped forward. Captain, if I may. The biological implications of this are fascinating. Interspecies reproduction between humans and Zilarians should be impossible based on our current understanding of genetics. Vexara turned her attention to the doctor. Your understanding is limited, human. Our species share more common ancestry than you realize. The genetic compatibility exists, but it requires the proper ceremonial bonding to activate the necessary biological changes. Jake felt like he was in a bad dream. And if I refuse? Then you and your crew will be executed as violators of our sacred honor code. Your refusal would be seen as an insult to our entire species and a rejection of our plea for survival. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner, Jake's tactical officer, spoke up from his station. Captain, our shields are holding, but their weapons are definitely more advanced than ours. If they decide to attack, we wouldn't last long. Jake closed his eyes for a moment, thinking through the options. He could try to fight their way out, but that would likely result in the death of his entire crew. He could try to negotiate, but Vexara seemed to be operating under some kind of legal or religious obligation that left little room for compromise. Commander Thorne, Jake said finally, I need to discuss this with my crew. Can you give me a few hours to consider your proposal? You have 2 hours, Captain Morrison. After that, I will require your decision. The screen went dark, leaving Jake alone with his thoughts and the concerned faces of his bridge crew. He could hear quiet conversations starting up around him as his officers tried to process what had just happened. Well, Dr. Stone said with forced lightness, this is certainly not covered in the first contact protocols. Jake almost smiled. Despite the situation, no, it's not. He looked around at his crew, seeing fear, confusion, and determination in their faces. These people had followed him across the galaxy, trusted him with their lives, and now he was being asked to make a decision that would affect all of them. Maria, what are our options for getting the engines back online? The chief engineer shook her head. They've done something to our power systems that I've never seen before. It's like they've created some kind of dampening field that prevents our engines from starting. I'd need days to figure out how to counter it, and that's assuming I had access to detailed scans of their technology. Alex, tactical options? Limited, sir. Their ships are positioned to cover all possible escape routes. Even if we could get engines back online, we'd be destroyed before we could reach jump distance. Jake nodded grimly. He had suspected as much, but he had to explore all possibilities. Rachel, can you get me a secure channel to Starfleet Command? I'll try, sir, but they're jamming most of our communications. It might take a while to get through. As his crew worked to find alternatives, Jake found himself thinking about Vexara. Despite the ultimatum, he had sensed something in her manner that suggested this situation was as difficult for her as it was for him. She had spoken of ancient laws and sacred honor codes, but there had been something in her eyes that looked almost like desperation. The next 2 hours would determine the fate of everyone on his ship, and possibly the future of 2 entire species. Jake stood in the conference room with his senior officers, the weight of decision heavy on his shoulders. 2 hours had passed since Vexara's ultimatum, and he had made his choice. The lives of his crew came first, even if it meant sacrificing his own freedom. I've decided to accept their proposal, Jake announced to his team. Dr. Stone nodded gravely while Chief Engineer Maria Santos looked worried. But I want everyone to understand that this doesn't end our efforts to find another way out of this situation. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner leaned forward. Captain, what exactly does this bonding ritual involve? We need to know what we're dealing with. Before Jake could answer, the communications system activated. Vexara's voice filled the room. Captain Morrison, your time is up. What is your decision? Jake pressed the reply button. I accept your proposal, Commander Thorne, but I have conditions. You are not in a position to make conditions, human? Actually, I am, Jake replied with more confidence than he felt. If you want this to work, you need my willing cooperation. I'll go through with the bonding ritual, but I want my crew protected and treated with respect. They're not part of this agreement. There was a long pause before Vexara responded. Your crew will be given quarters on our command ship and treated as honored guests. You will be transported immediately to begin the preparation rituals. Preparation rituals? Jake asked. The bonding cannot be completed without proper ceremony. You must prove your worth through 3 trials. The first begins in 1 hour. The screen activated, showing Vexara in what appeared to be a large ceremonial chamber. She was no longer wearing her military uniform, but instead wore elaborate robes decorated with symbols that seemed to shift and move in the light. The first trial is combat, she explained. You must face our champion warrior in single combat. Victory is not required, but you must demonstrate courage and fighting spirit. Jake felt his stomach tighten. He was in decent shape, but he had never considered himself a warrior. What kind of combat? Hand-to-hand with traditional weapons. You may choose your weapon from our armory. Captain, Alex interrupted, I should go in your place. I have more combat training. No, Jake said firmly. This is my responsibility. He looked back at the screen. I'll be ready in 1 hour. The next hour passed quickly as Jake prepared for something he had never imagined doing. Dr. Stone gave him a quick medical examination while Maria Santos worked to analyze the Zalarian ship's systems from the information they could gather. Their technology is impressive, Maria reported. These ships are built for both war and ceremony. The chamber where you'll be fighting has been used for these rituals for thousands of years. Lieutenant Rachel Green had been monitoring Zalarian communications. Captain, I'm picking up a lot of chatter from their fleet. It seems like this whole situation is being broadcast to their home planet. You're going to have quite an audience. Jake tried not to think about that as he was transported to the Zalarian command ship. The transportation chamber was unlike anything he had experienced. Instead of the familiar tingle of human transporters, this felt like being dissolved and reformed. In warm water, he materialized in a large circular chamber with high ceilings and walls covered in intricate carvings. Dozens of Zalarian warriors stood around the edges of the room, their green skin gleaming in the artificial light. They all wore similar robes to Vexara, but theirs were simpler and less decorated. Vexara approached him, carrying a selection of weapons. Choose your weapon, human. You will face Gorthak, our finest warrior. Jake looked at the weapons, swords, spears, and things he didn't recognize. He selected a sword that felt balanced in his hands, trying to remember the basic training he had received at the academy years ago. Gorthak stepped forward from the crowd. He was enormous, even by Zalarian standards, with muscles that rippled under his green skin. His face was covered in scars that told the story of many battles. He carried a massive, two-handed sword that looked like it could cut through metal. You are small human, Gorthak said in a voice like grinding stone. But Vexara has chosen you, so you must have some hidden strength. The combat began without ceremony. Gorthak moved faster than Jake had expected, his massive sword whistling through the air. Jake barely managed to dodge the first strike. Feeling the wind from the blade as it passed inches from his face, for several minutes Jake found himself completely on the defensive. Gorthak's strength was overwhelming, and each blow sent vibrations through Jake's sword that made his arms ache. The Zalarian warrior was skilled as well as strong, and Jake realized quickly that he couldn't win through direct confrontation. Instead, Jake began to use his smaller size and human agility to his advantage. He moved around the chamber, using the space to tire out his opponent. Gorthak's heavy sword required enormous energy to swing, and Jake noticed that the warrior was beginning to breathe harder after several minutes of intense combat. You fight like a dancing insect, Gorthak growled, swinging his sword in a wide arc that Jake ducked under. I fight like a human, Jake replied. Landing a quick strike on Gorthak's arm that drew a thin line of green blood, the crowd around them began to murmur with interest. Jake could see Vexara watching intently. Her amber eyes focused on every move he made. The battle continued for nearly an hour. Jake's strategy of movement and endurance began to pay off. Gorthak's massive swings became slower and less precise as exhaustion set in. Jake still couldn't overpower the warrior, but he was beginning to land more hits. using techniques that the Zolarians had never seen before. Finally, Gorthik stumbled slightly after a particularly powerful swing. Jake saw his chance and moved, in placing his sword at the warrior's throat. Both fighters were breathing heavily, sweat mixing with blood from various small cuts. "Yield," Jake said simply. Gorthik looked at him with something that might have been respect. "I yield, human. You fight with wisdom instead of strength. This is ... unexpected." The crowd erupted in a sound that Jake realized was Zolarian applause. It sounded like a combination of clicking and humming that filled the chamber with strange music. Vexara approached them both. "You have passed the first trial, Jake Morrison. You have shown that humans possess a different kind of strength, one that we had not considered." Jake wiped sweat from his face with the back of his hand. "What's the second trial?" "Strategy and tactics. You must solve a military problem that has challenged our best minds for generations." She gestured to another part of the chamber where a complex three-dimensional display was being set up. "You will have access to our historical records and military databases. The problem involves defending our home planet from a theoretical invasion." As Jake was led to the strategy station, he noticed that the Zolarians around him were looking at him differently now. Before they had seemed curious, but dismissive. Now there was genuine interest in their expressions. The strategic problem was complex. The three-dimensional display showed the Zolarian home system with multiple planets, asteroid fields, and space stations. The scenario involved defending against a fleet of unknown attackers with superior numbers and technology. Jake studied the display for several minutes, noting the positions of defensive installations and the capabilities of the Zolarian fleet. The problem seemed designed to test traditional military thinking, but Jake suspected that wasn't what they really wanted to see. "The traditional solution would be to concentrate our forces here," Jake said, pointing to a defensive position near the home planet. "But that plays to the enemy's strengths." Instead, Jake proposed a strategy that used the asteroid fields as cover for guerrilla attacks against the enemy fleet. He suggested using small, fast ships to harass the attackers while the main fleet remained hidden until the enemy was weakened and spread out. "This is not how we fight," one of the Zolarian officers protested. "We face our enemies with honor, not hiding like cowards." "Honor doesn't matter if your people are dead," Jake replied. "The goal is to win, not to look brave while losing." Vexara studied his strategy carefully. "Your approach is unconventional. Our military doctrine emphasizes direct confrontation and personal valor." "And how well has that worked against superior forces?" Jake asked. The question hung in the air. Jake could see that his point had struck home. The Zolarians were facing extinction partly because their rigid military thinking hadn't adapted to new threats. "You have passed the second trial," Vexara announced. "Your strategic thinking shows creativity that our people lack. This gives us hope that the bonding will bring new ideas to our species." Jake felt a mixture of relief and growing concern. 2 trials down, 1 to go. But he was beginning to realize that this wasn't just about saving his crew anymore. These people were truly desperate, and somehow he had become their last hope for survival. "What's the third trial?" he asked. Vexara's expression became more serious. "The trial of the spirit. You must share your deepest thoughts and memories with me through the mind link. If we are to be bonded, we must understand each other completely." Jake looked around at the assembled Zolarians, realizing that his journey into their world was just beginning. Jake stood in the center of a smaller chamber deep inside the Zolarian command ship. The walls were covered with crystals that glowed with soft blue light, and the air smelled of something like cinnamon mixed with ozone. Chief Science Officer Danny Walsh had briefed him about what little they knew of Zolarian mental abilities, but Jake still felt unprepared for what was about to happen. "The mind link will connect our thoughts and memories," Vexara explained as she approached him. She had changed into robes that seemed to be made of living light, shifting between green and gold as she moved. "You will see my past, and I will see yours. There can be no secrets between bonded mates." Jake nodded, trying to hide his nervousness. What exactly will you see? Everything that has shaped you into the person you are today. Your fears, your hopes, your failures, and your victories. The link will show us if we are truly compatible or if this union is doomed to fail. Two Zellarian priests entered the chamber, carrying a device that looked like a crown made of the same glowing crystals as the walls. They placed it carefully on a pedestal between Jake and Vexara. Place your hands on the crystal, one of the priests instructed. The link will begin automatically. Jake hesitated for a moment, then reached out and placed his palms on the warm crystal surface. Vexara did the same, and immediately Jake felt a strange, tingling sensation that spread up his arms and into his mind. The world around him faded away, replaced by a swirling mixture of colors and sounds. Then suddenly he was somewhere else. Entirely, he was standing in what appeared to be a Zellarian city, but it was dying. Buildings crumbled around him, and the few Zellarians he could see were thin and weak, many of them coughing up green blood. The sky was a sickly yellow color, and the air tasted of decay. "This is my world," Vexara's voice said, though she was nowhere to be seen. "This is what the plague has done to us." Jake watched as scenes from Vexara's life played out around him. He saw her as a young warrior, full of pride and strength. He saw her rise through the ranks of the military, always fighting to protect her people. Then he saw the moment she learned that she was one of the few Zellarians who might be able to bear children, and how that knowledge changed her from a warrior into a scientist desperate to save her species. "I never wanted to be a leader," her voice continued. "I wanted to be a simple soldier, but when my people began to die, I had no choice." The scene shifted, and Jake saw Vexara working in laboratories, studying genetic samples, trying every possible solution to save her people. He felt her frustration, her desperation, and her growing fear that nothing would work. Then the images changed, and Jake realized he was seeing his own memories through Vexara's eyes. She was experiencing his childhood on Earth, his decision to join Starfleet, his first command. And every moment that had led him to this point, he felt her surprise as she witnessed human concepts of democracy and individual freedom. Zellarian society was built on strict hierarchy and duty, but she was seeing a world where people could choose their own paths. "Your people are so different from ours," she said, her mental voice filled with wonder. "You make decisions based on personal choice, not just duty?" Jake found himself in his own memories, but now he could feel Vexara's reactions to them. When she saw his memories of losing his first ship in a battle against space pirates, he felt her understanding of the weight of command. When she experienced his guilt over the crew members who had died under his leadership, he felt her recognition of shared pain. "You carry the burden of leadership the same way I do," she said softly. "I thought humans were weak because you show emotion, but I see now that feeling pain and still continuing forward requires its own kind of strength." The mind link deepened, and Jake began to understand Zellarian culture in ways that no human had before. He saw their history, their values, and their deep fear of extinction. But he also saw something else, a growing faction of Zellarians who opposed the idea of mixing their bloodline with humans. General Vorthak believes that breeding with humans will destroy what makes us Zellarian, Vexara explained as Jake witnessed heated arguments in the Zellarian High Council. "He has many followers who would rather see our species die pure than survive mixed." Jake felt a chill as he realized the danger this represented. "How many support him?" "Nearly half of our military leadership. They follow the old ways, believing that honor is more important than survival." The mind link was interrupted by alarms blaring throughout the ship. Jake and Vexara were jerked back to the present, the crystal crown falling dark as emergency lights began flashing. "What's happening?" Jake asked, still disoriented from the mental connection. A Zellarian officer burst into the chamber. "Commander Thorn, General Vorthak has seized control of the planetary defense systems. He's declared the bonding ritual invalid and ordered the execution of all humans aboard our ships." Vexara's expression hardened into something Jake had never seen before, pure rage mixed with determination. "How many ships support him?" 6 of our 12 vessels have joined his rebellion." The others remain loyal to you, but his forces have surrounded the planet. Jake felt his heart racing. My crew, are they safe? For now, the officer replied. But General Vorthak has demanded that all humans be turned over to him within the hour, or he will destroy any ship that protects them. Vexara turned to Jake. I must ask you to trust me completely. The Mind Link has shown me your character, and I believe you are the key to saving both our species. But first we must survive this rebellion. Jake nodded. What do you need me to do? Help me end this civil war before it destroys what remains of our people. They rushed to the bridge where chaos reigned. Zalarian ships were maneuvering into battle positions, preparing to fight each other while their species faced extinction. On the main screen, General Vorthak appeared, his green skin scarred from many battles and his eyes burning with fanatical determination. Commander Thorne, he said, his voice filled with disgust, you have betrayed everything our people stand for. These humans will corrupt our bloodline and destroy our culture. I will not allow it. General, Vexara replied, standing tall despite the danger. Our culture means nothing if we all die. The humans offer us a chance to survive. Survival without honor is not survival at all, Vorthak snarled. I would rather see our species die with dignity than live as mongrels. Jake stepped forward, knowing that his next words might determine the fate of both species. General Vorthak, I've just shared memories with Commander Thorne. I've seen your people's history, your values, your strength. Mixing our species won't destroy what makes Zalarian special. It will combine the best of both our peoples. You know nothing of our ways, human, Vorthak replied. You are a disease that we must cure before it spreads. The conversation was cut short as weapons fire erupted between the Zalarian ships. Jake watched in horror as members of the same species began destroying each other while their homeworld died below them. This is exactly what the plague wants, Jake said suddenly. It's not just a disease, it's dividing your people when you need unity most. Vexara looked at him sharply. What do you mean? Think about it. A plague that affects reproduction? That strikes just when your people are at their strongest. Then a civil war breaks out just when you find a solution. This isn't random. Security Chief Pete Johnson's voice crackled over the communication system from the USS Horizon. Captain, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. It's like nothing in our database. Jake felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. Commander, I think your plague might not be natural. Someone or something might be deliberately weakening your people. Before Vexara could respond, more alarms began sounding. A new fleet was approaching from the edge of the system, ships unlike any that either humans or Zalarians had ever seen. Unknown vessels are entering our space, the tactical officer reported. They're not responding to our communications. On the screen, the alien ships were sleek and black, moving with predatory grace toward the planet. As they approached, Jake noticed something chilling. They were heading directly for the areas where the plague was strongest. General Vorthak? Vexara called out on all frequencies. We have a greater threat approaching. Our people must unite or we will all die. For a moment, the civil war paused as both sides of the Zalarian conflict realized they faced something far more dangerous than each other. The unknown ships had begun scanning the planet, and Jake had the terrible feeling that they were looking for something specific. Commander, he said quietly, I think we're about to discover who really created the plague that's killing your people. The Mind Link had shown him Vexara's memories, but it had also given him insight into the true nature of the threat they faced. The bonding ritual would have to wait. First, they had to survive what was coming. The black alien ships hung in space like dark predators, their sleek hulls reflecting no light. Jake stood on the bridge of the Zalarian command ship, watching as the mysterious vessels began scanning the planet below. The civil war between Vexara's forces and General Vorthak's rebels had stopped completely as both sides realized they faced a common enemy. Commander Thorne, came Vorthak's voice over the communication system. His tone had changed from anger to concern. These ships are not in our database. They appear to be scanning areas where the plague is strongest. Vexara looked at Jake, her amber eyes reflecting the same worry he felt. If your theory is correct and the plague was artificially created, then these aliens might be the ones responsible. Science Officer Carol White's voice came through from the USS Horizon. Captain, I'm analyzing the energy signatures from those ships. They're using some kind of biological scanner that can detect genetic damage from orbit. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. They're checking to see how effective their weapon has been. One of the black ships began transmitting a signal. The main screen flickered, and an alien face appeared that made everyone on the bridge step back in shock. The creature had pale gray skin stretched tight over a skull-like face, with large black eyes that seemed to look right through them. When it spoke, its voice was like the sound of breaking glass. "Zilarian species," it said in perfect Zilarian. "Language. Your biological resistance has been measured and found acceptable. We are the Devourers. Your planet will be harvested in 72 of your hours. Do not resist, and your death will be swift." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Jake realized that the pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together in the worst possible way. "They've been weakening your people?" "With the plague," he said. "Making you easier to conquer when they arrive to harvest your planet." Vexara's face had gone pale, her green skin taking on an almost white tinge. "Harvest. They mean to eat us." "Captain," came Alex Turner's voice from the horizon. "Long-range sensors are detecting more ships approaching from 3 different directions. We're looking at a full invasion fleet." Jake looked around the bridge at the Zilarian officers, seeing fear and desperation in their faces. Then he looked at Vexara and made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. "Commander Thorne," he said formally, "I request that we complete the bonding ceremony immediately." "Now?" she asked, her eyes wide with surprise. "In the middle of an invasion, especially now," Jake replied. "Your people need unity more than ever. If we're bonded, it sends a message that humans and Zilarians stand together against this threat." General Vorthak's voice came over the communications. "Again, the human speaks wisdom. Our civil war only helps these Devourers. I withdraw my rebellion and pledge my ships to the defense of our homeworld." What followed was the strangest wedding ceremony Jake could have imagined. In the main ceremony hall of the Zilarian command ship, with enemy vessels approaching and time running out, he and Vexara were joined according to ancient Zilarian traditions adapted for the desperate circumstances. The Zilarian high priest spoke words in the old language while Jake and Vexara stood before an altar made of the same glowing crystals used in the mind link. Instead of the elaborate 7-day ceremony traditionally required, they performed a condensed version that still maintained the spiritual significance. "By blood and honor, by strength and wisdom, 2 become 1, the priest intoned as Jake and Vexara each cut their palms with ceremonial knives and pressed their hands together, mixing their blood. Jake felt the same tingling sensation he had experienced during the mind link, but stronger. It was as if something fundamental in his biology was changing, adapting to accommodate the bond with Vexara. By weapon and shield, by trust and sacrifice, 2 peoples become 1. The priest continued as Jake and Vexara exchanged ornate daggers, symbols of their commitment to defend each other. The ceremony concluded with a complex dance that told the story of 2 different species learning to work together. Despite the approaching danger, Jake found himself moved by the beauty and meaning of the ritual. Medical Officer Jennifer Ross, who had been monitoring the ceremony from the horizon, reported something remarkable. "Captain, your biological readings are showing changes I've never seen before. It's as if your DNA is actually adapting to be compatible with Zilarian genetics." Dr. Stone added his analysis. "The bonding process appears to trigger dormant genetic sequences in both species. Whatever created us, we're more closely related than we ever imagined." As the ceremony ended, Vexara turned to Jake with something that might have been wonder in her eyes. "I can feel your thoughts more clearly now. The bond is stronger than I expected." Jake could feel it too, a constant awareness of Vexara's presence in his mind, not intrusive but comforting. Like knowing someone was always watching his back, their moment of connection was interrupted by urgent reports from the fleet. Navigator Sam Parker's voice crackled through the communications. Multiple Devourer fleets are converging on the system. We have maybe 6 hours before they arrive in force. How many ships are we facing? Vexara asked. Sensors indicate over 200 vessels in the main fleet, came the grim reply. They're massive, each one 3 times the size of our largest warship. Jake felt the mental bond with Vexara strengthen as they both realized the magnitude of the threat. Through their connection he could sense her fear, but also her determination to protect her people. We need to evacuate the planet, General Vorthak suggested over the communications. Get as many people as possible to the outer colonies. No, Jake said, an idea forming in his mind. Running won't solve anything. These Devourers will just hunt down your people wherever they go. Then what do you suggest, human? Vorthak asked. Jake looked at Vexara, sharing his thoughts through their bond before speaking aloud. We fight, but not the way either of our species has fought before. We combine human tactics with Zalarian technology and create something these Devourers have never faced. Communications specialist Gary Brooks reported from the horizon. Captain, I'm detecting unusual activity in the Devourer fleet. They're sending out scout ships to probe our defenses. Perfect, Jake said. Let them probe. They're going to find something they didn't expect. Over the next few hours, Jake and Vexara worked together to coordinate the defense of the Zalarian system. Using their mental bond, they could communicate instantly and share tactical information in ways that no military force had ever achieved. Weapons Officer Helen Cruz reported successful integration of human and Zalarian weapon systems. The energy output is incredible, Captain. By combining our technology, we've created weapons more powerful than either species could build alone. Supply Officer Rick Stone coordinated the massive logistical effort of preparing a joint human-Zalarian defense force. Despite having only one human ship compared to dozens of Zalarian vessels, the humans brought knowledge and tactics that complemented Zalarian strength and honor. As the Devourer fleet approached, Jake stood on the bridge next to his new wife, feeling the weight of 2 species' survival on his shoulders. Through their bond, he could sense Vexara's thoughts and knew she felt the same responsibility. Whatever happens, she said quietly, our peoples are stronger together than apart. Jake nodded, watching the enemy ships grow larger on the screen. The Devourers are about to learn something they never expected, that humans don't just survive. We adapt, and now we're not fighting alone. The first Devourer scout ships entered weapons range, and the battle for the survival of 2 species was about to begin. But Jake felt something he hadn't expected: confidence. The bond with Vexara had shown him that humans and Zalarians together were more than the sum of their parts. The real test was just beginning. The Devourer fleet filled the space around the Zalarian system like a dark cloud of death. Jake stood on the bridge of the combined command ship, his hand resting on Vexara's shoulder as they watched over 200 massive alien vessels approach their position. Through their mental bond, he could feel her determination mixed with fear, and he knew she could sense the same emotions in him. Final count shows 230 enemy ships, reported communications specialist Gary Brooks from his station. Each one is roughly 3 times the size of our largest vessel. Numbers don't tell the whole story, Jake replied, his voice carrying more confidence than he felt. They're expecting to face either humans or Zalarians separately. They've never fought against both species working together. The joint human-Zalarian fleet consisted of only 27 ships total, but each one had been modified with technology from both species. Weapons Officer Helen Cruz had successfully integrated human targeting systems with Zalarian energy weapons, creating firepower that exceeded anything either species could achieve alone. Captain, came the voice of Chief Engineer Maria Santos from the USS Horizon. All ships are reporting successful integration of the new weapon systems. The combined energy output is beyond our previous calculations. Jake felt Vexara's thoughts through their bond as she coordinated with the Zalarian fleet commanders. Her ability to share tactical information instantly through their mental connection was proving invaluable in organizing their defense. The Devourers are moving into attack formation, General Vorthak reported from his flagship. They're using the same pattern they probably used to conquer other species. Then they're in for a surprise, Jake said. He activated the communications system to address all ships in the combined fleet. All vessels, this is Captain Morrison. Today we fight not as humans or Zellarians, but as one people defending our home. Remember, they expect us to follow traditional military tactics. We're going to show them what happens when human creativity meets Zellarian honor. The battle began with the Devourers launching a massive frontal assault, their black ships moving in perfect formation toward the planet. Jake had anticipated this approach based on their earlier behavior and had positioned his forces accordingly. Phase 1, execute, Jake ordered. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on as military doctrine suggested, the human Zellarian fleet scattered into small groups and disappeared into the asteroid belt that surrounded the system's outer planets. The Devourers, expecting a direct confrontation, found themselves shooting at empty space. What are they doing? Came confused reports from the Devourer fleet, intercepted by Lieutenant Rachel Green's communications team. The prey has vanished. Phase 2, Vexara announced, her mental link with Jake allowing perfect coordination. Small groups of modified Zellarian fighters emerged from behind asteroids, launching hit-and-run attacks on the edges of the Devourer formation. The attacks were brief but devastating, using human guerrilla tactics that the Devourers had never encountered before. Their formation is beginning to break apart, reported Alex Turner from the tactical station. They're trying to chase our fighter groups, but they can't match our maneuverability in the asteroid field. Supply Officer Rick Stone coordinated the complex logistics of keeping the scattered fleet supplied during the running battle. All units are maintaining ammunition and power levels. The supply caches we placed throughout the asteroid belt are working perfectly. For 3 hours, the battle continued as a deadly game of hide-and-seek. The Devourers, despite their superior numbers and firepower, found themselves unable to land decisive blows against an enemy that refused to fight by conventional rules. Captain, Dr. Stone's voice came through from the medical bay. I'm monitoring your and Commander Thorne's vital signs during the battle. Your mental bond is allowing coordination at a level that should be impossible. Jake could feel it too. Through his connection with Vexara, he was aware of every ship in their fleet, every tactical decision, every moment of the battle, as if he were experiencing it from dozens of perspectives simultaneously. They're getting frustrated, Vexara observed, her mental voice calm despite the chaos around them. The Devourers are used to quick victories against weakened opponents. Then it's time for Phase 3, Jake replied. Navigator Sam Parker had calculated the perfect moment when the Devourer fleet would be most spread out and vulnerable. All ships are in position, Captain. The enemy is stretched across half the system trying to chase our fighters. Jake activated the fleet-wide communications. All units, execute final phase. Show them what humans and Zellarians can do when we work together. The scattered human-Zellarian fleet suddenly emerged from hiding spots throughout the system, but instead of attacking randomly, they moved with perfect coordination. Using the mental bond between Jake and Vexara as a communication network, every ship knew exactly where to be and when to be there. The combined fleet struck the Devourers from 6 different directions simultaneously. Zellarian energy weapons powered by human technology tore through enemy shields while human tactics guided Zellarian warriors to strike at the most vulnerable points of the massive alien ships. Direct hit on their command vessel, Weapons Officer Helen Cruz reported with excitement in her voice. The combined weapons are more effective than we hoped, but Jake realized that conventional weapons alone wouldn't be enough to stop an enemy that had conquered multiple star systems. Through his bond with Vexara, an idea began to form, one that was uniquely human in its audacity. Vexara, can you extend our mental link to other Zellarians? He asked. It's possible, but dangerous, she replied through their bond. The connection could overwhelm minds that aren't prepared for it. What if we don't try to connect to Zalarian minds? Jake asked. What if we try to connect to theirs? He pointed toward the Devourer fleet on the main screen. Through intercepted communications, they had learned that the Devourers operated as a hive mind, with individual ships taking orders from a central consciousness. You want to attack their collective mind, Vexara said, understanding immediately. Use our bond as a weapon, not attack, Jake corrected. Infect? Show them human concepts they've never experienced, individual choice, freedom, the idea that cooperation is stronger than domination. Working together, Jake and Vexara began to project their thoughts beyond their own mental link. Using Zalarian technology to amplify the signal, they broadcast human ideas of independence and free will directly into the Devourer hive mind. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Devourer ships began to slow, then stop as individual units started questioning orders for the first time in their existence. The concept of choice, so natural to humans, was completely alien to creatures that had lived their entire lives as part of a collective consciousness. It's working, communications specialist Gary Brooks reported with amazement. Their fleet coordination is breaking down. Individual ships are actually arguing with their command structure. Some Devourer vessels began to turn away from the battle, their crews experiencing the terrifying and wonderful sensation of independent thought for the first time. Others fired on their own command ships, rejecting the hive mind that had controlled them for so long. The command ship is retreating, General Vorthek announced. The remaining fleet is following, but they're moving like they've never flown independently before. As the Devourer fleet limped away from the system, Jake and Vexara collapsed into chairs, exhausted from the mental effort of their unprecedented attack. Through their bond, they could feel each other's relief and triumph. We did it, Vexara said softly. But more than that, we've given some of those Devourers something they never had before, the ability to choose their own path. Dr. Stone's voice came through the communications with news that made their victory even sweeter. Captain, Commander Thorne, I have remarkable news. The genetic changes from your bonding appear to have created antibodies that are effective against the plague. Commander Thorne is showing complete immunity. 6 months later, Jake stood in the nursery of the new joint human-Zalarian colony, watching as Vexara held their newborn son. The child had his father's dark hair and his mother's amber eyes, and according to Dr. Patricia Ford, he carried genetic immunity to the plague that had nearly destroyed the Zalarian people. The USS Horizon now served as the flagship of the human-Zalarian Alliance, exploring the galaxy and offering help to other species threatened by the Devourers or similar enemies. Many of the liberated Devourer ships had joined them, their crews learning to live as individuals rather than as part of a collective. What should we name him? Vexara asked, looking down at their son. Jake smiled, thinking about how a forced marriage had become the foundation for saving 2 species and freeing a third. How about Hope? He suggested. He represents the future of all our peoples. As they watched their child sleep peacefully, both Jake and Vexara knew that their story was just beginning. The galaxy was full of species that needed help, and they had proven that cooperation was stronger than conquest, that love was more powerful than fear, and that sometimes the most unlikely alliances could change the universe.